Atomic Heart, buy or pass? Probably not a buy for $70, but if you're getting it on Game Pass, slam dunk. Let's see what Maddie said.
Everybody, it is Maddie here today, sitting down for my review of Atomic Heart. A big thanks to Focus Home Interactive for providing the review code about 4 days ahead of the embargo lifting. It gave me just enough time to finish this one up, develop my thoughts, and deliver them to you here today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Atomic Heart is a game we've been waiting a long while for. It was first announced in 2017 with its initial teaser trailer, and from there, a lot
He's playing BioShock music. That's funny.
of the industry was captured with this alternate history, Soviet Union focused, BioShock style game. And for me personally, as an alternate history junkie, I was all over this one. But as the years went on and we got further and further away from that initial teaser, much of the hype had kind of died off. Just, okay, Atomic Heart looks great, but when can we finally play it? Well, all that time of waiting is finally over. And for Xbox fans especially, I imagine you're excited because this is one of the big gets for day one Game Pass. For the rest of us, we're paying $70. With that, is Atomic Heart worth your money, and is it worth your download? We'll be splitting up the verdict.
I truly miss him holding the microphone. Yeah. For those of you guys who missed it, there was a Maddie era that only lasted about 2 weeks where he broke his mic stand and he would just hold his SM7B like this. Just hold it. And it was great. It was magical. It was a magical time. It really was. Stefan, would Half-Life Alyx justify buying a PSVR 2? Honestly, if you have a PS5 and like not a PC or anything, maybe. Like it's really good, but like you might be better served getting a gaming PC and then a PC headset. But I mean, again, that's a lot more money. So I don't know. Half-Life Alyx is great. It really is. But it's a third-party, non-exclusive title, so it's tricky. It's tricky. So I'm less convinced, but
at the end of this video. But ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into day one reviews, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Atomic Heart is a game that truly I wanted to love. There are high highs and quite frankly, low lows. Now these lows are not down to the pits of hell itself, but certainly I think the game stumbles often over its own ambition. It sometimes tries to do a little too much, and you see flashes of brilliance throughout your 20+ hour experience.
You see, this is why I was worried about technical performance. On my 4090, this was smooth as butter. But look at these frame drops he's showing. Like, this is bad.
Too much, and you see flashes of brilliance throughout your...
That's rough, man.
It sometimes tries to do a little too much, and you see flashes of brilliance throughout your 20+ hour experience. But as those flashes of brilliance come and go, you wish that Atomic Heart just paused for a moment and focused on those strengths rather than trying to do a million different things at once. Focus is important, especially now as the budget and time of development for these games grows. And I feel like Atomic Heart will be an important lesson for a lot of the industry. So let's get started, as always, with the world, the story, the...
Why does... I think you're saying, why does this cam look a little washed out? To me in all the footage. I don't know. To me, I think Maddie's cameras are usually just auto-wide balanced, and I don't think he uses neutral light as his key light, so I think that's most of it. If he just used like a 5600 Kelvin front like key light, and then the rest of it was colored, I think it would have a lot more depth in it.
The universe, and this is a game where the story's ridiculousness is outweighed by its world building, which is fantastic. I found myself completely in love with Atomic Heart off the rip. You see, its opening is quite familiar if you've played a BioShock game before.
Dude, his frames are so bad.
Doing its absolute best during a festival as the opening hours crawl on.
Like a little shocked.
As things slowly begin to descend before your very eyes, now robotics have started to revolt against humanity. The robots are here because Soviet Russia had won World War II. A fascinating outcome I find personally as someone who really does enjoy alternate history.
I mean, technically they did win, though. They were on... like, technically. They didn't lose. So, Like, I get it. Like, basically, in this alternative history, in the 30s, the Soviets developed this, like, sort of plasma, weird, liquidy substance that could be used to do all of this. They also solved cold fusion and stuff. So, yeah, in this version, they didn't starve 60 million people. Exactly. So, like, in this version of history, in the 30s, the Soviets became super, super advanced. And as a result, like, ended up way ahead of everything else. So I think that's most of what the alternative element is here. But anyway.
It reminds me a bit of, say, Wolfenstein, where what happens if the Germans won World War II? I love asking those types of questions and having stories explore them. So I like where Atomic Heart is heading. And what happens is Soviet Russia becomes this robotic, technical powerhouse, and their robotics are deployed all around the world. So naturally, when the robotics begin to revolt, this is not just a problem for Russia, this is a problem for the entire planet.
Real quick, this is like a total sidebar, but it just made me think of it. One of the only reasons I'm actually interested in like investing in Tesla is for the Tesla bot. Because I think, like, if you've seen iRobot with Will Smith, that movie slapped. And that movie, I think, represents what will eventually take place, where most manual labor will be replaced by androids, because it only makes sense. Why wouldn't we eventually reach that point? And as far as I know, like, Tesla is the only company, like publicly traded company, that is actively developing something like that we know of. Does anybody in chat know of any other company that's working on, like, androids? Well, yeah, Tesla. Well, that's why I'm like asking about a different company, because Tesla is like kind of, it can sort of walk, sort of, but it's like 50 years away from actually being useful. But if anybody knows of anything, yeah, Boston Dynamics, but I don't think they're a publicly traded company, are they? Like, I've seen the stuff they're doing, but can you invest in Boston Dynamics? MIT, yeah, like, I'd love to be able to invest in MIT, but I'm like, I want to throw all my money into that, because the moment that starts working and they can take those androids that like Boston Dynamics has that can do backflips and like dance and run and stuff, the moment we have that and that starts to be like sellable, then good God Almighty, like your $100 investment, your $1,000 investment will be millions, because instantly manual labor will be like obsolete. Hyundai acquired Boston Dynamics. Really? I'm gonna look this up. Okay, we'll keep going. But if Hyundai actually did take on Boston Dynamics, then I would like pour money into Hyundai. Not official financial advice, but I'm like, Boston Dynamics actually has an Android that can like do crazy stuff. But if that's true, then Hyundai, all of a sudden, I'm much more interested in that.
Throughout the entire game, you're going to encounter
Boston Dynamics
fascinating technology. And to me, I cared less about the story and more about the exposition through data logs, as well as hearing your glove speak to you and break it all down. Things like Thought, a genetic rewrite that allows you to learn a brand new language in a single day, for example, instead of going to class and trying to learn year over year. Or that polymer glove I just referred to that allows you to control the elements, all the way down to the robotics that you're going to be fighting. It is all there because there was a goal with humanity to start colonizing the moon and other planets within the solar system. To me, that's the type of stuff that pulls me in, more than the game's...
Yeah, Boston Dynamics is owned by Hyundai Motor Company. That's crazy.
ridiculous writing, because, yeah, this game is absolutely nuts. Now, as always with cheesy B-tier kind of writing and delivery, this will be charming to some. For me, there were times it was, and the game got a genuine laugh out of me. There are other times that I sat there and truly wished the game had the focus to take itself a little more seriously. The situation around you is serious and believable, the world is fascinating, and through sheer exploration of its environments, before you start to comb a layer deeper, you could tell a lot of thought went into how Atomic Heart's world came to be. For the story to be joking around constantly, with an MC that just can't go a sentence without cursing, it's ridiculous and people will love it. I didn't hate it, but I personally can't say that I felt it helped the game.
I actively hated it. Like I said in the review, the protagonist, P3, will repeatedly scream out, and I'm not joking, crispy critters. Like, A lot. I counted at least 9 times in the game's main story where he screamed out, "Crispy critters!" in dramatic moments. And then there's moments where he's like baffled and he'll go, "Crispy." It's freaking weird. Like, I feel like I'm missing something. Like, it happened the first time. I was like, what? What did he say? Like, what? And then, like, he kept saying it, repeated. It's like his catchphrase in the game. It's weird. I don't get it. What was the original Russian line? I have no idea. All I know is that in the English version, he screams out "crispy critters" at a lot of really weird, inappropriate times. A lot. Like, however much you're thinking, like, okay, that would be too much crispy critters dialogue. He does it more than that. It's freaking weird. It's just weird. Matthias, I'm so behind on all of these. I suck so bad at this. What is my deal today? Matthias, thank you for the 5.
Mateus Rangel donated 5 Brazilian reals through Super Chat. Hey Elvis the Alien, have you ever heard about Phobia? It's a really cool Brazilian horror game. Sav from Brazil.
I have heard of it. I've never played it. But thank you for the 5. I'll have to check it out. And yeah, everybody says I look or sound like Elvis the Alien. I don't really know why. And Rari, yes, thank you for the $1.99. I need to play the Yakuza games. I have them downloaded. I just haven't gotten around to them because this month has been crazy. But
don't get me wrong.
Yeah, everybody liked the
deeper
stream.
into the game, it gets equal parts more ridiculous as well as interesting. So it's a very unique experience in that part. But the world itself, to me, is just the biggest grab. I loved exploring its environments and seeing all the unique setup and pieces that they had to tell me about this world more and more. For example, as you're crawling through the facilities of Atomic Heart's world, you're gonna see that each room was made with purpose and thought. These are rooms such as one full of plants, and these plants specifically are in this room with these gigantic fans because they want to use these to terraform the likes of the moon, Mars, etc. To me, it just pulls things together. The vision, the overarching world, and where it's going, it works really well for me. And for some, this will just be exposition heavy shooting galleries, but I again really dug the level of thought gone into the reason why things here even exist. You could tell that's thoughtful, careful world building. And while you'd still see some of the same assets be used as you went from hallway to hallway to hallway, since there was a distinct narrative purpose for them that would give you exposition behind it, some will be bored to tears. For me, I found this to be the greatest strength.
The greatest strength. Thank you, Strongish Guy, for the 2. What up, CoffeeZilla? You doing good? Rocking and rolling. CoffeeZilla, isn't that another YouTuber? Or is that like Coffee Hour or something? Or you just call me CoffeeZilla because I like coffee. And I'm probably overthinking it. I don't know.
The universe there is exactly what you wanted it to be. Now, I said that this game disappointed me. It's not really in the story, and it's certainly not in the universe. It's unfortunately in the gameplay, the structure, and the balancing that it just completely misses the mark on. In the opening hours of the game, it has a distinct melee focus. It's extremely cumbersome and makes you dodge constantly. I was getting flashbacks to Callisto Protocol way too quick with this one. Now, shooting works, otherwise it feels sluggish, even when weapons are upgraded. When you're mixing powers and gunplay, that is when Atomic Heart is at its finest. When you're using your frostbite to freeze over a robot and then taking out your axe and beating them over the head. Even if it's a little glitchy in the fact that once I kill an enemy in that state, they just disappear. I liked the combination of abilities, gun power, as well as melee attacks. But there's never a flow. There's never a good feel to it all. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like what I said with, say, Forspoken, where controller mapping was a problem. The way the controls are mapped in this game work totally fine. And you can tell thought
Luke
went into
Sands
that, given the
donated
game's
$5
action can
through
pick
Super
up pretty
Chat.
quickly.
UPI
It's
is
just
adding a lot
a
of stuff
feel
to help
thing.
new players
It's
in
sluggish,
R6 this year,
it's
so my
cumbersome,
timing of
and
asking you to
oftentimes
play
not
turns out to be pretty good, lol.
Yeah, you want me to play Rainbow Six. It's not bad. It's you. Rocky really wants me to play wants me to play Destiny because Destiny's getting an update. Iron Cyclops Caleb, he really wants me to play Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And like all of these games are kind of like you're either in it or you're not. Like either this is your game or you'll have no idea what's going on. So I just don't even know. I don't know where to start.
Balance well. You will walk into scenarios where you must fight and you will be overwhelmed with a dozen plus enemies at once. For some, this will give it a sense of locomotion and urgency. For me, it was so beyond chaotic and haphazard that it felt like they just threw enemies at you without any real goal, any real design in these encounters, and just said, figure it out yourself, the game should work itself out, when it really typically doesn't. That's why the dodge focus is a problem here. It works in gunplay, but when you're in melee and you're fighting 5 enemies at once and they are all coming at you with attacks that you need to separately dodge, it brought me back to Spider-Man 2, which I just played for a video on Retro Rebound, where if you are getting smacked around and a bunch of enemies are trying to attack you at once, and the only way you can evade them is with dodging, you're guaranteed to get hit. With all of these ideas collected, you can watch before your very eyes as the combat just collapses upon itself as its systems cannot uphold all of the chaos on screen. There were so many long, nauseatingly drawn out combat sections in this game that truly made me want to put my head through the nearest wall. It got ridiculous at some points in time. I don't mind long combat encounters, I don't mind challenge, but when your game is not fun to play, it really makes it hard.
This controller gameplay is also giving me a stroke.
Hard to forgive. Occasionally there are puzzles where the powers really show their potential of interaction, but they are unfortunately few and far between. There's this one magnetics focused puzzle, a moment in the game where they're going through explaining why it exists, and a moment I could see people finding boring. But for me, it was different, and it showed the versatility of the powers that you had and your skill set and how the game could continue to flex these, but they just didn't do so often enough. The same goes for boss fights. They're actually epic at times in these games, but other times they're just spongy enemies with health bars, and I'm like, why does this even bother existing if you're not going to explore it fully? You see, if I were to define Atomic Heart as anything, it's a jack of all trades, master of none. You'll do a hacking minigame that turns into Snake, you'll do this magnetic puzzle, you'll end up shooting a giant robot boss that has tons of phases. It does a lot of things, and in certain parts like that boss fight, it does them really well. But then in that moment where I do that Snake hacking minigame, I'm absolutely bombarded with enemies afterwards that will relentlessly attack you until you are dead on the ground. My God, the balancing in the terms of damage and amount of enemies coming your way just doesn't feel right.
It does feel like they just toss stuff in here and there's no rhyme or reason. I absolutely agree with that. Why is the game so ugly in this capture? I think he's playing it on an Xbox. I think he'll explain it later. But like he showed at the very beginning that gameplay footage you saw, which was super stuttery. Let me show you my clip of that combat encounter. No frame drops. For me, this was playing right around 130 to 140 frames. That's with DLSS on, and that I don't actually think I had frame generation on because it was causing screen tearing issues. But, I mean, my footage here you see is way smoother, and I'm not even sure if the shrubs were in his footage. I'm not even sure if they loaded. I think he's playing on an Xbox. We'll see what he says. I'm guessing that's what it is. Because this footage, running at 4K natively, everything on atomic quality scale, it's a very good looking game. And it's very smooth. And all of the footage he's showing is like super rough. Super rough. You can also tell I'm playing on mouse and keyboard. Because mouse and keyboard's better. Don't at me. That's just a fact. Just a fact.
Clear it was not fine-tuned here, and it's very upsetting because even if that was fixed, it doesn't feel good to play. There's no part of the game that resembles the pains I'm expressing more than the open world section. The opening 5 hours or so of Atomic Heart are linear, and you can tell they were on one track for a single game, and they got to a point and said, let's do something else. So eventually you get to a point where the game opens up, and now you can explore its open.
See, he says he thinks that it was being developed as like a linear game, and then they pivoted and decided to put these open world elements in. I have the feeling the opposite happened. I think they had this open world thing that they were working on, and then they realized, dude, it's going to take us 15 years to get this game out with how slow this is going. So let's just take the open world we have and then put the main story through it. And I think that's what they did. Because it like every bit of the way, it feels like they are trying to justify the big map that they gave you, even though the main story is paced really, really poorly. And then it feels like at some point they just said, you know what, we're not going to be able to pull this off. We just have to figure out how to make this more linear. And then we'll tell people it's open world, and if they want to mess around with it, they can figure that out. But the whole main story is super linear and all that stuff.
Open world, seek out upgrades for your weapons, or explore various facilities in the open world. Otherwise, there are houses that you can farm resources from, and you'll be able to go into the machine called...
Yeah, that clipping, like that clipping of the curtains. I never saw that, but that's an Xbox thing, I think.
Nora. It's at Nora that you can upgrade not only your character and their skill set.
Oh, one weird thing, Nora, the robot that you use to upgrade your equipment and stuff, she like is like a sexual fiend. The robot is, so like she'll, when you first meet her, the robot will like talk to you and try to be like, oh, you're such a strong man, oh yes, open my cabinet. Like it's a little weird. Again, it tries to be funny, but it's weird. It's weird.
And get very useful upgrades, mind you, like being able to dodge multiple times or being invincible while dodging, which helps in the later game, downright to upgrades like pretty much your plasmids, if you will, such as frostbite and shock and what they can do.
Yeah, and you see that on the right. Let me move my cam to the other side. That on the right, so they have this like their own sort of vault boy, like in Fallout, but he's used only in these screens and in like the difficulty selection screen at the beginning of the game, and like that's it. But they went to all this trouble of hand animating like this cartoon version. It's just a little strange. It's a little strange. Again, it's a cool idea, but they like use it once and then don't really touch on it after.
Like being able to shock multiple enemies. The open world is deceptively beautiful. While you first step into it, you go, oh my gosh, I want to go everywhere. Especially if you're in the same boat as me, who is really digging the universe. You start to realize that there's a lack of connective tissue really pulling together the entire game. It's just a bunch of things being thrown at the wall and seeing what necessarily is going to stick. Now, I'm all about haphazard game design. Honestly, that reminds me of the PS2 generation. But here it feels like truly aimless design, especially as I roam the open world more and more, and all it is a home to is being harassed by robots as I get caught in the alarm system and the alarm level goes up and suddenly there are literally 10 robots on my ass. It is quite frustrating to be out here where the best solution oftentimes is to run out of combat encounters, and it's in those moments that you recognize something is truly wrong with the game. If combat is good, I'm going to want to engage, right? I'm going to want more of that, even if the encounter rate is high. But here, eventually, all I wanted to do was run away and just get to the next point in the story. It brought me back to Amazing Spider-Man 2. A lot of Spider-Man references in this review, but I swear it makes sense because
I can tell what he's been playing. Like, this is one of the fun things about Maddie's videos, is that he plays all these old school games. And so we'll just come out swinging with like, this reminds me of this kind of obscure game from 2007. I'm like, what? Okay.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 had this chaos system that as you got deeper in the story, the cops would just harass you. And it's the same thing here. As you get caught once or twice, you make a rare slip up, which is going to happen in a dynamic open world. You just get clapped immediately with like 8 enemies at once. It's like, God, dude, just let me breathe. Exploration has its boons, particularly in the terms of finding upgrades available for your weapons like recipes. But to me, the biggest boon was, again, trying to connect deeply with that world, with that universe. And so I loved reading some of the logs found on terminals around the open world. However, the real meat and potatoes of that exploration is to find weapon upgrades, because oh, you'll need them if what I talked about with combat earlier is anything to go off of. Now, each weapon has multiple types of upgrades that change its look and feel, but also have levels to set upgrade. So there is that open world collectathon nature to it where you're just going to keep finding resources and more and more and more until the cows come home. The problem here with Nora leads me into one of my closing points, which is this game's buggy, friend. It is buggy. Speaking of Nora, when you're working with this machine, there are times that you will spend resources and your items will disappear. Imagine you go up to this.
Hold on. This might actually be a Maddie issue. I think this might actually be an oopsie. In this game, when you craft stuff, let me see if I can find a clip of this. In this game, when you craft ammunition and things, it will show up in the bot. So like it will craft it and then place it in like a tray that you have to take. But basically like you'll be crafting stuff and then out of Nora, like right where the sort of gray half moon is, it will dispense the ammunition and you have to pick it up. And what you just saw in that footage he just showed this clip of him crafting it.
You're working with this machine. There are times that you will spend
sent to storage
resources
and then he leaves.
And your items
and then he's like, oh, the ammo's not there. And it was sent to storage. And what that means is like in your inventory, hold on, I gotta pick a different clip. So like you'll have this storage where extra ammo that you craft will be sent into this inventory. And then you have to move it from this inventory into your personal inventory where you'll actually carry it with you and bring it with you. So when he just crafted that ammo, it got sent to here, which is in a different tab, still within Nora. And then you have to move it from here to here if your personal inventory is full, which is a lot of the time because the inventory is super, super small. So I think maybe the clip he showed just made me, it could be that you craft it and then it just didn't show up for him. That it could be what he's saying. But what I think he's describing is that he's crafting it and then he's like the ammo disappeared, but it went to like the storage or it gets set into the tray and then you have to pick it up and take it with you. So I think this is more likely an oopsie on his end or poor UI or something, or maybe it is actually a glitch and this clip he's using is just a little obscure.
Here, imagine you go up to this machine, you go, all right, I need 10 healing items. It's about to be a boss fight. I'm low on health. Okay, what can you give me? So I craft 10 healing items. It takes my resources. I'm like, okay, good. Where's my healing items? And it just doesn't give them to you. So
it does though. They're in the storage. You see all these freaking healing items I have? This is because I would craft or find like 10, 15 of them. And then it would go here. And then you have to pull these out and put them in your inventory. Now, but then again, it could be that it glitched for him because I had plenty of bugs where I had plenty of bugs. But it could be the case that maybe he was crafting stuff and it didn't get sent here. I would say based on how he's describing it, it sounds more like he didn't check the storage, even though it pops up and says check the storage or ammo sent to storage or whatever. So this is a weird one, but I mean, it might just be that I'm confused. It might be that he's confused. I don't know.
So I go back in. I'm like, maybe they send them to my storage. Let me check. Let me check my inventory. Nothing. It is frustrating. You can't be failing me here when I need to heal myself and I don't have the option to now. The game's just constantly breaking.
Yeah, you see, he crafted it and then he backs out and he's like, where's my healing items? It's because your inventory fills up stupid quick and then you have to pull it from storage into your inventory if your inventory's full. Demand he open his storage. Call him right now.
I had a single crash one time when going through my experience. Still worth calling out given the plethora of other bugs because I did only play this on PC.
He's on PC and he's having those frame drops. Oof. I just assumed this was on like a Series X or Series S. But he's saying it's on PC and he was having that. That's rough.
It's possible the console versions are far worse. I had this very familiar...
He said he checked the storage though? Okay, I must have missed that. If he checked the storage, like I said, it could just be that he's it was glitching out repeatedly. I never had that bug. I didn't have anything close to it. Every time I ever crafted stuff, it went to storage, and then you pull from storage, put it in here, and it works. Or it gets dispensed onto the tray, and then it opens up, and then you take the item. One time I did craft a gun and leave it behind in the Nora accidentally. But then it automatically was sent to my storage, so I didn't lose it or anything. So if he did check the storage and it is just a genuine bug, then that does freaking suck. That would drive me absolutely crazy.
Your bug from my time of reviewing Scorn. When I was reviewing Scorn, I couldn't finish one of the puzzles because
what in God's name is that controller? I don't know, dude. I don't know. Is it one of those like Razer ones? I don't know. I love my Elite Series too. I will live with that forever.
Because I was using a controller. It only worked with keyboard and mouse. That's obviously not something that's supposed to happen. So me and my expertise in these types of bugs was playing Atomic Heart, and I could not control this snake puzzle. I continued to fail it over and over, and I thought to myself, there's no way lightning's about to strike twice. And lo and behold, when I switched from my controller to my keyboard, I was...
Okay, that's freaking stupid. They didn't map it. So like the controls for the snake mini game, which happens like once, by the way. Well, maybe twice, but like you barely see this thing in the whole game. And the fact that they didn't route it for the controller input. So if you're playing with a controller, you just can't complete it. That's unbelievable. That's a big oopsie. Wow.
I was able to complete the puzzle. Other times, objectives just flat out don't update. You'll just be told, hey, your next objective's available. And you're like, okay, where do I go? And it's not until you like cross into a certain threshold that it'll finally tell itself to update. So some of the checkpoints are set up weird and override each other, it seems like. And then there are your more common bugs. There's performance dips at times. There seem to be some problems on the back end here. And I found that upsetting as well because we've waited so long for this game for it to come out in a state that's so, to me, chaotic. Makes me ask what was happening during development. But I digress. Atomic Heart is a game I want to love. I really, truly do. Its world is awesome and well thought out. Downright to the environments that you explore. It's all thought-provoking. It's all interesting. But when I get to actually playing Atomic Heart and rather not investigating its world is when I start to lose interest because it's just not a good feeling first-person shooter, mostly due to encounter design, but also the fact that it just doesn't feel good. So now it goes to the verdicts, right? It's an interesting one because it's a Game Pass game, but it's also a game you could pay for. If you have Game Pass, I always tell people, pretty much just ignore me. If you were interested and you want to try it out for yourself, this should not bar you from at least giving it the old college try. I think it could be worth that. I'll just say that the game truly doesn't start until past that mark where you enter the open world and you really know what it's all about. But that section is very long-winded, and I think some people will lose heart with just that, pardon the pun. So I would say...
They will lose Atomic Heart. Oh, God. You become a dad, and then these weird, stupid jokes just become so funny. It's weird.
If you have Game Pass, it's at least worth a look if you were initially interested. If you aren't, I have a tough time now recommending downloading it because I'm just like, go play something else that's not going to frustrate you. Meanwhile, if you're spending money on this, this is a definite wait for a sale.
Does he say what his PC specs are? No, I don't think so. I'm baffled his boss fight encounters are that bad. Like his frames are all over the place. And like I played this on Steam Deck, and on Steam Deck I didn't have that many issues. I did say in my review, so like I think it was Saturday afternoon. Maybe Friday afternoon, but it was one of the two. They sent out a update, a patch on Steam, and it basically made you re-download the entire game. And prior to that, maybe I even have footage of this. Prior to that patch, when you played on PC, no, not really, doesn't show it. But prior to that, there was basically a little like loading bar up here on the top that said compiling shaders or building shaders or whatever it said. And it would do that, and it would run at like 5 FPS in this menu until that was done. And then once it was done, you could play the game and didn't have any drops. It still does that on Steam Deck. If you play on Steam Deck, it will like load the shaders when you boot in, kind of like with Hogwarts Legacy, how it builds the shaders, and then it plays fine. But after that update, that thing went away and it no longer built the shaders when you boot it up. Now, maybe they built it in a way and this update made it so that wasn't necessary anymore. I don't know. But what I do know is that performance was way worse after that patch that got rid of that shader compiling thing. So hopefully with the day one patch, they can add it and figure it out. The other thing that maybe people didn't really experiment much with the difficulties, but I said this in my review, the difficulties are ridiculously balanced, like, not in a good way, not like ridiculously well balanced. They're so poorly balanced, it's ridiculous. So there's Peaceful Atom, Local Malfunction, and Armageddon difficulties. Peaceful says, we are pleased to welcome you on an easy sightseeing tour of Facility 3826, comrades. Spectacular and dynamic battles with robots won't take too much effort or distract you from the narrative. Of course, you'll still have to fight, but only the plot will keep you on your toes. This is a lie. Even on Peaceful Atom, the game can get pretty difficult. They might balance it, they might patch it, and it might get better. But it's like really, really rough. You'll go from, this is a walk in the park, this is stupid easy, this is certainly a narrative difficulty. And then you'll move into the next room and you'll find a boss that can one-shot you. It's super inconsistent. Local Malfunction is the regular. And they said this is just supposed to be kind of challenging. And then Armageddon is real nightmares in store where you'll need experience, reaction speed, and skills to properly manage your resources to survive. Save your bullets and always keep one in reserve for yourself. And honestly, like, it's really, really inconsistent. Super inconsistent. So don't be ashamed if you feel the need to change your difficulty option. If you start on Armageddon and you want to lower it, don't be ashamed of that. If you start on regular and you want to bounce it down to the low one, don't be afraid. Don't be embarrassed, because this game can be extremely difficult if you are not careful.
Atomic Heart isn't an absolute avoid, get out of the way, this is a bad game. There's heart here. I gotta stop with these puns. There's love here.
He did have bushes and stuff in this. I guess I tuned them out because I was so distracted by the frame drops. But look at this frame drop when he starts healing. Look at this.
Get out of the way, this is a bad game. There's heart here. I gotta stop with these puns. There's love here.
Look
There's
at that.
care here. You can tell it was not a lazy effort. I just don't think they had time to balance things out. And I think a couple of patches will do this game some favors on the tech end, and maybe they'll enhance a couple of things in the terms of balancing. To me, $30, and I think you're okay. Anything above that right now around the launch
So Maddie has bush.
period, I would say just store your cash. The pickings are good. There's no reason for you to spend your time on an experience you may not enjoy. If I don't sit here and feel, as always, full-heartedly like I did with Dead Space Remake, for example, where I'm like, this rocks, go get it, versus this where I'm like, you might like a thing or two, but you could get really annoyed. Just wait. It's the safer purchase in my opinion. And if you have Game Pass and you're interested already, go give it a whirl. You can at least try it out there and see for yourself, which is the most important review of all. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts on Atomic Heart. I'm curious to see your thoughts down.
Yeah, also not great. Not great impressions. It's just a bummer. Like, it's not easy to make these games, to be clear. It's not easy. It's very tricky. But games also, like, we're literally paying them to make good games. Like, it's funny because people will say, like, Luke, I think your expectations are out of whack. I think you're expecting too much from these companies to expect, like, polished games that are, like, that have compelling gameplay and stories and things. I'm like, I get that it's tough to do this stuff. Nobody's doubting that. But it's literally your job. Like, the job of these devs is to make this good. That's why we're paying them $70 a copy. And so if it's bad, I get it's hard to make it good, but that doesn't serve as an excuse. It's still bad. It's the same thing with the main character being like, oh, this is so boring in this mission. It's like, yeah, I'm glad you noticed. Why? Like, did you not? Like, yes, fix it. Like, just because it's bad doesn't mean that you acknowledging it excuses it. It's ridiculous. With most stuff being $70 now, people willing to look at this stuff with a critical eye more than ever. Well, yeah, and especially like people are, this is going to be a tough economic year, I have no doubt, for a lot of people, and so understandably, people are going to start to be a little bit more cautious and careful with where they throw their money. Have I watched ACG's review of Atomic Hearts? I have not. Is it worth watching? We went through Maddie's. I know he always does really, really good reviews. So I know that I'm sure it's great. He likes it more than most. I wonder if we can look at it. I'm glad he enjoyed it. Like, no shame over liking that, but it's I really was quite taken aback by it.
Atomic Heart is an occasionally frustrating, often enticing, frequently surprising, but consistently interesting dive into what would happen if a non-Western developer attempted their own BioShock. And to me, it's one of the most enjoyable, weird, and oddly fun games this year. Thanks to Focus for early review code. Subscribe if you want a chance to win the game. The first 1,000 comments will be the first 1,000 comments. Atomic Heart wears its inspirations, namely BioShock, Prey, and other immersive sim games, on its shoulder, or as an entire coat, depending on what part of the game you're playing. Where the subtlety of...
I touch on this in my review. I kid you not. Towards the end of the game, I couldn't play it in the review because it's after the threshold that they said counts as spoilers, even though they show a section from that moment in the game in the trailer for the game. So it's like, if it was a spoiler, why did you share it? But anyway, but in this particular moment, there's a moment where, I kid you not, a new area is kind of like revealed and shown to the player. You don't get to explore it, but it's just shown to you. And the character says, "It's a rapture." And then, I kid you not, the exact same music, chords, and like little whatever scale is played as when you first see Rapture in the original BioShock. When the water comes and then the squid goes by and you see the whales swimming by. Super iconic. When I heard it, I like kind of snapped out and I was like, oh my God, it's Rapture in BioShock. But no, it's in here. So there's moments where they like straight note for note do the BioShock little tune to bring you and be like, yes, we know this is what inspired it. We're not going to pretend like it didn't. Yes. Like they just straight up presented as just about as clear as you possibly could do it, which is kind of crazy. It took me back, but
BioShock
right.
was the descent into one man's madness at trying to achieve the perfect utopia, and then in Infinite, the misleading theatrics and even dismantling of a utopia. That isn't Atomic Heart. It does the same thing, but from a very different standpoint. And trust me, a standpoint where the utopia isn't even close to what a lot of Western audiences may think it is. It's an alternative history Russia. A scientist creates a material that basically puts Russia on the forefront and on the fast track for discovery and labor, robotics, energy, and technology. On the eve of the newest technological invention, everything goes haywire, and it's up to you, P3, a war veteran, to go in and clean up the mess and figure out what's happened. Atomic Heart plays not only with the alternative reality, but AI minds, the idea that more mundane technologies might split off into their own tech tree like a 4X game and yet still hit the same benchmarks, offering a different style of the internet and artificial intelligence and neural minds in the form of the Collective 2.0. Mixing man and machine, but the man is usually lost to the machine. Now, the reflection of communism, the thoughts of the individual being less important than the group already, means that P3 sees the loss and the progress for the entire worldview and not one individual person, which is usually the cornerstone of many of these stories, and makes you feel the difference right away. There's a provocative thought experiment when playing this game, both narratively and in the demonstration, in these dual moments, hitting you here or there with one-liners, secondary comments, and environmental audio to show you where the world is and what some massive moment in the world might mean to you later on, but might also mean to the entire nation. And that heaviness absolutely helps. That connection that you have, even though it would appear you don't have it, is one of the best parts of the game. And the game design stretches those moments of wonder explorations just a bit longer than audiences are probably accustomed to. The intro to this world, for instance, and the next intro, and then the third intro are profoundly beautiful, easily.
Yeah. No, they really are. And then the game gets horrible for like an hour and a half. I also will say, in this first 2.5 minutes, he's shown like, I think 3 clips that I would have classified as spoilers. Or as like too late in the game, or big reveals that I wouldn't have shown off. Maybe I'm just too like, I'm too anal about it. Maybe I'm like too stressed about showing stuff that people shouldn't see before they've played it. Maybe I'm the problem.
In many ways equal to the moments of first seeing Rapture, but their intros, the introductions, they happen at a different directed pace, perhaps more on rails when we see it in other games. Here, a little bit more freeform, even in the way that the camera's used. Atomic Heart lets these moments sink in as you listen to Russian radio during your descent into the world. But at exactly that same time, the story is rising up around you, and the two meet exactly at the last moment of the cutscene. This dichotomy and then a symmetry and joining that isn't lost on even the most jaded gamer like me. I can't easily explain that full opening. You'll have to see it for yourself, how much it can get your mind going. It reminds me of some of the better games openings that we've seen. Like the best fictions, though, portraying alternative realities, the transparency in which we experience our own worlds still slightly colors the experiences in the games.
I will say, I mean, I hope he touches on the moments right after this, because it gets really, really weird. We know you're the problem, Luke, but you're our problem. You're damn right I am. Hell yeah! Yeah!
Offering motive and foundation to P3's story, to the changing world that you experience, causing you to move into each moment, to start to feel for them, to transfer your own experiences into this pocket-like memory where it feels almost like a past experience, a misremembered time in your own life. Atomic Heart actually does that in the story, with each story bit and cutscene and new enemy type building up alternative history. In conclusion about the story, immersive sims and their pacing reminds me a bit of rap styles, Eminem to E40, Bone Thugs and Harmony, or even someone like Lamar. They come out with their own speeds, and in nationalities of the creators, it's impacted the same way in games. You can feel it from start to finish in the pacing of Atomic Heart, and in the combat and exploration. Combat feels good in some places and not so good in others. The shotguns, the laser guns, some of the up-close weapons that you get and feel, they appear fine, but there's a little bit of a softness to them. Now, you do have a number of upgrades and crafting systems with ingredients you get around the game world. Stunningly, the crafting and collecting system is handled via psychic power, which means you don't have to go to every single cabinet and structure, but instead, like Magneto searching a room, spinning around looking for screws, you grab all of the collectible items. It's awesome and works incredibly well to reflect the reality of P3 as a character.
I will say, it works great on controller. On mouse and keyboard, it's a little annoying. Unless you can route a macro. Because you have to hold down F, and then you hold down F and you look at the cabinets, and wherever your reticle's on, it searches that cabinet, pulls stuff out. However, on most people, that's going to be their index finger, pushing down on F. And then, normally people use these 3 fingers, the triad as it's known in most high schools, and you use these to then you do WASD. The problem is this finger's being used. So either you have to learn how to use your pinky on the A key, or you're going to be doing this weird thing where like you shift your fingers down while holding down F, and it's just really, really weird and uncomfortable as you walk around the room holding down F to pull stuff out. Yeah, sounds like a skill issue. No doubt. My fingers aren't as nimble as they used to be. My poor wife. But yeah, it's one of those things that don't tell her I said that. It's one of those things that is like really, really, it can be awkward. Like there were multiple times where I was like, this is weird. This feels weird. Yeah, we need more hand stuff. Exactly. I'm never going to let her live that down. Nikki, what about the hand stuff?
Comboing moves, weapons, and platforming, and then go.
Should I get Nikki a t-shirt? We'll put it on the merch store that's just hashtag hand stuff. I'll give it to her and just be like, yeah, this is your uniform for whenever you come down to the stream. You have to wear this. I don't know what to tell you.
In and being able to easily just remove all the collectibles in a room by spinning in a circle and searching more quickly. is a deft touch. But that combo's not so much. If a first-person shooter game is going to meet the very basics of its named criteria, then shooting it should have. And while Atomic Heart has some, it's the enemies that at first in the game don't do so well. The robotic cyborg enemies, dead-faced and wide-eyed. They have an iRobot Apple kind of wrong look to them. That's cool. The appearance of a mannequin made by someone who didn't quite have a good picture of a human being is haunting. You haven't questioned humanity until you've been face-to-face with a doughy-eyed 1970s porn stash outfitted robot. But some of their attack animations are pretty bad. They just don't look that good, and it takes a couple hours of gameplay for better ones to appear. The combat's not terrible, but it progressively gets better with new enemy types. And it's just those first moments when fighting those robots, it never feels exactly right until you realize why you're facing those robots in those particular areas and why it changes later on. Also, while the up-close combat's serviceable, it's also not amazing. Some hits on enemies seem a bit farther away than they actually should be, or miss when you feel like they should hit, with dodges being the best part and the best way to get out of the way of power attacks that enemies can use to knock you down. Combat's at its best when it's visceral, when flesh meets bone, and sometimes metallic flesh. Enemies, mechanical, biological, and biomechanical, throwing themselves at you like shoes for sabotage, and you're single-spinning, chewing gear, fighting them back. Atomic Heart looks like a 1955's Russian Bioshock, a mixture of the basic design so known by the Soviet Union and the bloc countries, but warped through the lens of strangely advanced futuristic technology, and its inventor who, at the very least, at first blush, sees for the betterment of society. It is a beautiful looking game, but it's a mutt. Tracing its lineage may be a bit difficult when you start to play it. A little bit Stalker, Metro, Bioshock, each one leaving a mark on the end result graphically. But Mundfish has made sure to make it its own thing. Occasionally, graphically, it can be such a mix that it appears ungainly, a cute puppy run of a game, a bit clumsy, but already showing signs of something finer. That can also show up in some of the weapons when firing. They can result in a moment where you watch what happens and you think to yourself, what the hell? Then you upgrade it and you're like, I get it. The powers at play have a Bioshock feel, which makes sense, created from more than a few lovers of the original game, creating this one. As they level up, they do more and more with each ability, slightly adjusting. Freezing, electrifying enemies, dropping them from the sky, being able to dash through a battle location like Nightcrawler. The unevenness does rear its head here graphically, lack of detailed textures here and there, and later locations that seem a bit out of place. And let's discuss performance. The game has a number of settings and also supports DLSS 3 for frame generation if you have the proper NVIDIA card for it. You'll notice things like fire extinguishers every 20 feet in some spots, which can look ungainly and cumbersome. And then at the second moment, you'll jump into a room and you'll see this awe-inspiring moment where you can tell this was a laboratory where some of the most crazy experiments were done, but they were done with an idea of bettering society, even while losing a little bit of their humanity. Also, yes, the game does cache its shaders prior to that first play. And it does...
I don't know. For me, the shader caching was inconsistent. Initially, like I said, they did it before every load-in when you'd boot in. And then you would load in, and then it would, do it again and do it again. And every time you booted up the game. The latest patch made it so that stopped, and they didn't redo it, but then performance was significantly worse. So I don't know what the deal was. Yeah.
Does seem to do so after
The UI reminds me of Prey, and I hated that game. Someone give me mods so I can ban Robert.
or any patch. I did notice that there were some stutters here or there, even with the 3080 as well as the 4090, but with the 4090 with frame generation, it sort of went away. This is a game that does require a lot from the system, but has a lot of settings, and you're going to want to jump in and turn some of them down, because at times the draw distance in this game is insane. Its design and its requirement on your hardware is commensurate. There's a feeling...
I will say the 4090 is Gucci because you can just not worry about any of that. The frame generation led to terrible screen tearing for me, though. Weirdly enough, it went away when I did the Windows G thing to bring up the game bar, and then I pinned the performance tab. When I did that, then the screen tearing went away when it was pinned. Really weird. I have no idea why that is. If anybody is techie and knows, let me know why screen tearing with frame generation would be a thing. But once I pin the overlay, it goes away. I have no idea why that would be, but it just was. And that only happened again after the latest update. So it was some issue that they introduced that way. which is a bummer. But yeah.
Of imbalance, of a need for some room or location to see just one more look or one more pass of polish, or when you notice the unevenness when walking at the slowest speed possible and you're using the gamepad, you'll notice your character runs in place like Richard Simmons warming up for a talk show spot. But it's where the ideas shine and where the fiction plays out that really captured my imagination. For example, after the incident that causes everything to collapse, the liquid invention that led to all of these problems fills some rooms and locations. And when you swim through it, it lets you enter the liquid and hear the memories there that play out of the people who were around it when it happened, bound psychically to the liquid like grooves in a record player, but hear the bubbles and ripples on the liquid as you swim through it. It could also be easy to see the excellent parts and ignore the problems, which the game does have when it comes to polish, or ignore the good parts and just see the bad. A question that's continued about this game is exactly what is it? Is it open world? Is it open city? The game has more of the reminders of a stalker in the first moments that feel like the middle moments of other games with the exploration.
I want to hear what he says here, because I think that like level design goes from fine to pretty good. And then the open world stuff is just bad. Like it's just bad. So it will be interesting to see what he says. Awesome, Bad Dreams. Thanks for joining the Discord, and yeah, we'll see you again soon. Thanks for coming by.
Turning from twisted tunnels and platformers to hub, then open city, then almost open world, hours into the game, especially if you want to explore and find more of the side story and puzzles and challenges. Just how long and how big? I have 41 hours in the game, and it's not 100% when it comes to the challenges and puzzles. It's much closer to a Far Cry and a Stalker, but without the consistent collectibles. It holds a more utilitarian storytelling of the Metro and Stalker games without the forced narrative and consistent moment-to-moment. Here, you got something that we see in a lot of AAAs. While playing Atomic Heart, I was reminded of a game years ago called Boiling Point: Road to Hell, and its sequel, White Gold. They were not great games, but their entire feel was different. But Atomic Heart is actually much tighter as a game than those two could ever be. And that's reflected in the gameplay, the way the AI works, how stealth works or doesn't work in some places. The game's pacing feels very different depending on the exact way in which you play it. Something that I think is reflected in a lot of immersive sims anyway, but even more so here. But wrapping up this gameplay section, I can tell you that the differences that we get in the presentation, even the problems with polish and the problems with combat, Atomic Heart continued to pull me through it. And strangely enough, just to overuse this cliche, it does have a lot of heart. Speaking of heart, let's talk about Mick Gordon and music. He's the heart and soul of many games, and his music works here as well.
Yeah, dear God, the music is amazing. Like, no joke. Even in the crafting menu, the music is a bop. Like, it has his 50s, like, it's awesome. I love it.
It's unique, it's eclectic, and as awesome as you would assume it would be for Mick Gordon, but it is delivered in a weird way. Chords wickedly pronounced throughout the entire battle, raging in and out during the busier moments, separating themselves from the action only rarely, and then you get these discordant mixes, and then classic old century Russian propaganda. Ambient musical points and occasional stingers keep you consistently informed, but also at the same time always on edge. The soundtrack goes all over the place, but somehow still solidly stays exactly where it should be. From classical arrangements everybody should know to bits and pieces that will be heard for maybe 1 or 2 times in the game, but remembered for a long while after.
Yeah, he smokes a cigarette right here. I don't think he smokes one for the rest of the game. Like they animated this thing of him taking a cigarette, takes a big hit, and then throws it down, and he never does it again for the whole game. It's a little weird.
I love this soundtrack. It might be very difficult to listen to outside of the actual game itself, which isn't necessarily something that is unusual for Mick Gordon stuff, but I dig the soundtrack. This is just awesome. And speaking of awesome, voice. For the most part, these are good. From the characters inhabiting the city you hear talking about the future and the past, about the issues within the game world that echo the feelings of pride and yet a subtle worry that can come across, to the characters you meet later that fall apart or are held up by one another. Even the main character, a one-line spewing imaginative riff between Duke Nukem and Bad Lieutenant. There's some imbalance here, though, reminding me of the...
These are those canisters that drove me crazy. You see, get the canister from the algae workshop, pesticide workshop, cold workshop, hot workshop. You do this after you've already collected like 2 different orbs. Like it's just baffling. Like you just did this tedious, annoying thing. Well, now do it 4 more times.
Rift between Duke Nukem and Bad Lieutenant. There's some imbalance here, though, reminding me of the graphical elements once again, where polish is there in spades, but you come across these moments or characters that don't hit, and their inflection on a question or a sentence seems as if it's not there at all. For the most part, it is. While the storytelling's fine in Atomic Heart, there is a lot of information given about the story while you are trucking around. It can be incredibly difficult to parse what a character's saying when you're in the middle of facing down some homicidal saw-wielding robot that looks like an ostrich. That has happened a couple times in this game where I had to go back and listen again to some kind of sound recording or something like that to sort of get a little bit of that story because the character's just yakking. There's also some lack of polish when it comes to the voices and you doing any discussion. If you accidentally choose the wrong part of a discussion and you've already heard it before and you want to skip it, when you do, the game has very bad mixing between the prior sentence and the next sentence and ends up having a little bit of a pop, almost an audio glitch there. It's something that they can easily patch, but I just wanted to point it out. And one last thing I have to point out, there is a crazed sales robot that is going to cause a lot of people to rock back on their heels in this game. The banter back and forth, almost entirely by the way, from the bot towards the main character is rough, harsh, oddly paced, and very, very sexual. I thought it was hilarious because it was so different and so surprising, and I will remember that character for years, but I can see a lot of people putting their pinky up and being like, oh, how dare they say these things. You really do have to identify who's saying what in these 2 conversations, but it will end up being a point that when it happens, you're probably going to be like, wow, they said that. Going away from speak.
It's kind of a weird way for it. Basically, there's a bot that's just like super, super sexual. And is like, oh my God, open up my cabinet. Oh yeah, I can't wait for you, big boy. Like it's weird. It's weird. And it feels a little out of place, I'll be weird. But there's a bunch of stuff in this game that's like that, where it feels like, okay, I get you were trying to be funny, but what I'm baffled is that nobody's mentioning the crispy critters thing. I kid you not. Like 9 times at least that I counted in this game, the main character screams out crispy critters in moments like as an expletive. And it's just weird. It's just freaking weird. It doesn't come off as funny. It doesn't seem goofy or anything. Like, it's just weird. And I don't get it. I feel like we were saying earlier, maybe it's a mistranslation or something. I have no idea. But it's odd.
Speaking at all, let's talk a little bit about the sound. This is...
Yeah, it's just my copy. They sent me a copy. Yeah, wouldn't it be funny if we trolled Luke and just had his protagonist? We'll just insert crispy critters and a ton of dialogue. See if he talks about it in his review.
Hit and miss for me, and I wasn't incredibly in love with it. The more interactive elements that you'll find in the audio department here in the game have difficulty getting through to your ears. Your time is spent checking imbalances and volumes in the audio options, and it will directly reward you with a better game if you do. In the more enclosed areas, they're fine, but it's also seemed to be mixed oddly. The game has a number of options, like I said, and I suggest you spend some time identifying what audio you want where. Environmental sound effects versus the main sound effects, and it actually took me a while to get those leveled out. While I wasn't disappointed with the gun sounds, the later weapons you get do sound better. The early weapons you...
No, they do not really have accents. A couple of them have weirdly British accents, but that's kind of par for the course for English versions of games. People think, oh, British? That means foreign. Like, so you're from the East, are you? Yeah, that's right. It's really weird. But no, there's not really... Like, there's maybe... one character I can think of that I would say has like a heavier Russian accent. Everybody else is pretty milquetoast. Yeah, I don't think that there's really. It's not like it's not as bad as the thing they did with like friggin' Assassin's Creed Unity, where it's a game set in France, but everybody has British accents. So everyone's like, that's a different place. It's just weird, like really, really odd. But then they do have a couple of characters in the game, like the kind of flamboyant guy. I forget his name, but the flamboyant guy you meet, like maybe a third of the way through the story of Assassin's Creed Unity, and he's very sexual, like makes a joke about being intimate with a goat and all that. And he has like a very thick French accent, and so I was like, okay, so are they just saving the French accent for the perverts? Because it's not like very very consistently applied. It's just weird.
Start with aren't necessarily as impactful as I would like, but when it comes to the sound, it was difficult to nail it down. Didn't really feel like it was doing a very good job giving me information on what I was doing right in front of me.
It's like Dr. Disrespect. Where's the sound? Where's the sound?
It's like a little bit distance compared to really what it should be. Environmentally, I would have also liked just more variation. You can definitely hear the different robots and different creatures coming to attack you from very far away and track them pretty easily. While the sound samples that they did use are varied themselves, I would have liked more, and I would have liked it to just be tightened up a bit. How does all this come together? Was Atomic Heart fun? And I think we have to look at fun as a combination of either true excitement rewarded by result or just interest paid back via subject matter. Atomic Heart has its issues with polish. It's also one of the most enjoyable, interesting, odd, and fun games I've played in a long time. It's Atomic Heart having both of those sections of fun. For every bad platforming section, because man, I do not like jumping in platformers.
I don't know what unique pacing means though. Like, how is that? Like, yes, it's different than most games. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that information. Like, what does that mean for the game? But I'm glad he enjoyed it. Crispy Critters Chicken and Fritters sounds like a great restaurant, though. Dude, I'd eat there. That does sound great. Didn't you call it bad pacing? Yeah, I mean, I would say the pacing is like, if we're defining pacing as like the rate at which they give you activities and things to do, I would say this game has bad pacing, because it will have whole stretches where even the main character is delivering dialogue about how boring this thing is. And it is boring. Like, you'll have it like an amazing intro and then an hour and a half of boring, bloated monotony. And then a really cool set piece. And then another hour and 15 minutes of boring, bland hallways and office corridors. So, like, I would say the pacing's really bad. He's saying it's unique, which maybe, you know, for him, he didn't find those low moments very low. But
usually, and this one definitely didn't elevate that, and its terrible dash button. Then there's some odd puzzle with a quirk of thought process that I actually liked, or some new story element. Later on, the combat gets better, and that curve is strangely enough right in line with the title itself. And gone are the days of a ton of unlocks up front. Be aware that. Exploration can also be enjoyable, even at its most basic. It's difficult to have the same expectations here as you do in other games, just due to the feeling of all the pacing being slightly off compared to what you may expect from a AAA. I enjoyed the game. I thought it was a blast. As you guys know, I rate games on a buy.
And I'm glad. We disagree on it. I think it's good. It's not great. I had fun for part of it. Part of it I found really, really tedious. But this is why there's multiple reviewers that do this stuff. You may end up siding more with ACG on this stuff. You might find the stuff I pointed out to be either you don't experience it because you didn't have the problems I did, or you just don't find it to be an issue, and that's okay. And so if somebody like ACG, if he's saying it's good and he had a blast, awesome. You might be one of those people.
I wait for a sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system, and this is also on Game Pass. I would say Atomic Heart is definitely worth getting, even at the full price. I do not feel ripped off at all. It is something different, and for that, it is something to me that was highly enjoyable. In some way, if you think about it, it's like a virus. That's a part of a mechanism that provided for evolution. Games like Atomic Heart do the same in many ways for new gameplay elements in games moving forward. We've seen it so many times, and it's my hope a game like this slightly infects other titles and lets companies take a step back of that crowdsourced, group-funded lore bath that we get in all of these other open-world games. I would have liked more true immersive sim moments where you had more narrative to talk your way through something, but really, it's a bunch of robots that's sort of different. But it is different. It's huge. It's interesting. It's fun, and it grows and continues. And I got to say, every time I thought that game was sort of wrapping up or in some way not going to show me something bigger, it did. And that's the curve to Atomic.
I just find that baffling because I had the polar opposite experience. Like I found that they blow their load early and then it just steadily degrades from there. But top marks from ACG. Yep, he liked it. I know we normally are pretty in sync on a lot of stuff, but also he has some weird, like, I don't know, he had some weird takes, I thought, with some games. Like, I think he gave Assassin's Creed Origins like a wait for a deep sail, or maybe it was Odyssey a wait for a deep sail. It was something like that, where I was like, and his review was also generally pretty positive. He was just like, it's more Assassin's Creed, it's whatever. And so, like, we've had a couple things that we disagreed on where I was like, I don't know if I agree on that rating, but but the point is, if he's enjoying it, you might be one of the people that really, really enjoys it and gets 45 hours out of it and is having a great time. He said he was at like, what, 41, 42 hours, I think he said. And the devs in the review packet that they send you when you're reviewing these games, the devs say that the story's about 20 hours long and the side content is about 10 hours long. So the devs think that this is only a 30-hour game. So if he's getting 41, 42 hours out of it, either he's already started like a second playthrough, which he didn't really mention. Maybe that's what it is. Or what I would guess is that it's because the game is really freaking hard. So he's enjoying those boss fights and those combat encounters that are super, super difficult and require you to try them 30 times. And he's enjoying those enough that he's kind of taking his time with them and really exploring and doing stuff. I don't know. Yeah, good thing it's on Game Pass. You can try it rent free. That's the great thing about it. Like, there's no way to spin it other than it's a win that it's on Game Pass. Because this is a game that generally seems middle of the road. It seems like a 75 out of 100 for most reviewers. And I think the fact that there's a couple people that really, really enjoy it, that's enough for you to be like, okay, maybe I try it. Maybe I will be one of those that really, really loves it. And with Game Pass, you're right. You don't have to take any risks. You don't have to pay the $70. You can just try it. And that's awesome. He took my thing.